Welcome back to another weekly analysis with your boy Mighty Fine. Gonna keep it short and sweet this week. We're gonna look at DXY, EURUSD, GBPUSD, and AUDUSD. Just a reminder, if you were interested, you can join my free Discord channel. The link is down below this video. I post fundamental analysis and macroeconomic education, as well as this analysis. Link goes there. It's always very organized, and I'll post some trade breakdowns and stuff like that too. So if you're interested, check out the link below. Otherwise, let's just get right into it. So looking at the US dollar, pretty strong week last week, finished a little bit bearish there. But overall, we are in a bearish trend. I have my daily structure set here. So this is my daily high or low. The reason I say that is that we got a break of flow, but then high volume continuation and big trend extension to the upside. So that's really the entire leg that we are currently in. I think the real question here is within this high time frame leg, one, where is our last major daily demand? And two, where might price pull back into in order to continue this trend? Where might we see a pullback into? Potentially they can reload on the buy orders and then push up into the next price target. Something I do want to highlight for you is that when we go up to the weekly chart, we can see that not only do we have a large break of flow here on the weekly, no real significant pullback, we're also running up into some important liquidity. If price can get above this high 107, pretty much 108 here valuation, then we should see a good push upwards into the 109, 110 regions as well. But this is going to be a major breaker bounce zone here for the dollar as price moves into it. Now, that's helpful for two reasons. One, we know that it's going to act as a magnet. So if price does pull back and or form some sort of continuation, we have a clear level for us to target on our dollar-based ideas. So that's good. Number two, it just gives us a little bit of heads up that, you know, there's some major liquidity there and we should probably take some profits out at. If price fails to break above that and we see some sort of intra-week or intraday transition from this 107s to 108 region, then it's very likely that we will get a pullback relative to some portion of this bullish trend leg that we're currently seeing. So what I'm saying is go over here from this body to this wick on your US dollar DXY chart on the weekly time frame. Just mark that out. It's a good thing to watch and see what happens. Now, this is our overall leg. I'm just going to go ahead and do my normal process here of marking out my key supply and demand zones. Great. Take that there. And then we're going to go and take a peek at the 4-hour chart. Okay, so we can see that there was a lot of injection of liquidity here in order to sort of start this last rally to the upside. We can also see that we have a little bit of a break of flow that occurred here Wednesday into Thursday of last week, but dollar trying to finish up and remain bullish even though we had this big contraction. So I'm going to mark this out just for good note taking. We have a 4-hour break of flow here. And then I'm also going to just mark out the current major supply of this bearish push that created that 4-hour break of flow there. Something like that. Okay. So a couple of things. One, if price were to break past this level, that means that we are most certainly seeing an H1 break of flow back into bullish order flow, or potentially bullish flow. We would then want to see something like this, where we get a retest and an extension up higher in order for us to say that this was indeed the pullback, and we may potentially be seeing an attempt to extend higher into those 107s, that gray region up top. So this level right here, oops, This level here, I would definitely mark it out on your H4 chart. I'm going to personally set an alert because I think that it is important and we should know that. Secondly, this is our current flow low. We are in bearish flow after breaking the bullish flow. So I'm going to mark this thing out, and I also want to know if that gets broken or extended past. So I'm going to set an alert there as well. I can move this to the side a bit so it doesn't get in our way. If price goes past this flow low here, I would anticipate we're going to come back down into the 105s region. That means that we're potentially having an overall bearish week on the dollar if that were to take place. The opposite would be true as well. If price breaks above this major supply here, again, we're looking for new higher lows and higher highs, signs that we're seeing bullish order flow. So a break above this level, some sort of pullback, and then a break higher as we attack that mid to high 106 supply zone up top. So need a little bit more data, but potentially bullish above that area, definitely looking at a bearish extension below that area. Both of these are kind of acting as major break or bounce situations. So can't give you a super decisive plan to start the week. But with that being said, once we get a little bit more data, we'll know a lot more. I've laid out a couple of potential scenarios for you, and you can trade those accordingly for our other pairs like EURUSD, GBPUSD, AUDUSD, whatever it is that you trade. This also applies to things like commodities and stock indexes as well. So there's certainly an extension above that level as well. I'm just going to mark that out. And that's sort of a break or bounce scenario there, though I would favor the upside where that might be more bearish. Boom. There is your price action guide for the dollar for the week. And you can do refinements of these levels or whatever you see fit on your own according to your trade plan. I'm going to move into EURUSD. Have a couple of things already marked out for you here. We'll expand upon these thoughts a bit as well, but overall, we can see that we had this extension to the downside last week and then a little bit of an attempt on Thursday into Friday to pull back up against that. I think that we're potentially just going to see continued order flow here, but one thing that I do want to make note of is that we do have this H4 break of flow here, again, very similar to our analysis on the dollar. So do keep that in mind. However, if price gets below this major daily demand, which would correlate to this intraday major supply, then we may just say that this was the pullback, bit of an overshoot here on this H4 supply zone, and price may continue bearish, coming back down to attack this trend low demand. If you wanted to mark that out, you could go wick to bodies, make sure that you don't have any bodies in there. And then I'm going to color code it so I know it's H4. So if price gets below that, potentially seeing continuation there, but it is a bit of a break or bounce situation. I definitely wouldn't be looking for buys off of this level just based off of what I'm seeing on the H4. However, if price got above this flow high, then I would say that it's leaning more bullish. And you can trade potentially upwards. So long position would look something like a break to the upside, some sort of pullback, and then an extension. Vice versa, if we got this break below here, we could look for some sort of pullback into this 105, 800 to 106 region here, and then look for that extension back down into the trend lows where, again, we have a break or bounce situation. So this, if this were to come through, if this were to break this intraday major demand and then pull back into this area, this could be a really good continuation trade in my mind. A little bit of news coming out this week, particularly towards the second half of the week. So definitely check out the Discord for those major events and my fundamental recap from last week. But we have NFP on Friday, as well as a few major events for a few different currencies sprinkled throughout the week. you know, I think London session tonight will most likely give us a pretty good indication of where the order flow is pointing for the week, but it's good to have some sort of contingency plans. So with that in mind, a break below this might signal further bearish opportunity, but wait for order flow. And then the same thing goes for a break of this flow high. If we get a crack to the upside and we don't break this major demand, look for price to pull back slightly and then start and extend upwards to show us that we are concretely going to be going higher. If that is the case, if we do go upwards, I would look to trade it into, I would say, roughly 106,900. 1.06900, roughly, up into that daily demand there. Cool. And GBPUSD, most likely a very similar situation as it is dollar backed. However, the British pound has just been getting beat the fuck up. And you know, the poor guys over there, the employment data is coming out bad. There's increasing chance of recessions, and now they're talking about more rate hikes and blah, 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 blah. On the daily chart, this is our current trend leg right here. There you go. And then as we go into this, we should probably mark out our current trend low. Now, this is just kind of an example of how these zones that I highlight for you work out. Price just moved on its extension. It moved zone to zone for us here. Two different levels that I've highlighted for two different reasons, but I've been saying for a couple of weeks, if not months now, that if price does continue bearish and breaks below this weekly demand, we should likely see an extension down into this 1.2100XXX region. And it worked out perfectly, right? The power of price action is phenomenal. But not to detract too much here. What we are seeing on our intraday time frame is that from Wednesday into Thursday, we had this big bullish run. Big bullish run. Now, what's unique about this, I think, is that we've already broken our intraday major demand level here. Okay, so we'll see that when I'll show you on the H1, but this was our intraday major demand that gave us that extension and push up higher in this bullish flow. Now, just because this broke doesn't mean that this bullish attempt is over, and I would just highlight for you that this is a particularly interesting region right over here. I would anticipate that this is going to be our break or bounce situation for the week. If you go into the 8-hour chart and you put a box over this white candle here, this is the area that I would take a peek at as we progress into this new week. So this is an area where if you got a retest and bullish transition on maybe your H1 or your M30, you could potentially consider a bullish play. I would also, in that vein, target to the upside. If we got the pullback, I would target about 1.223, roughly, this flow high region here. Now, I am net bullish from a macroeconomic stance on the dollar. And I think that this thing needs to have some sort of retracement against this flow leg. This could be it, or that retracement, again, could continue up higher this week if we have a bearish week for the dollar. So keep that in mind. You could certainly look to take the counter trade here, but what I would suggest is that if price does come down into this, wait for a pretty clear level of supply to be established and then broken and retested. And this right here would be the first area you might consider taking a bullish trade. I think it is safer instead, though, to take the trade once it surpasses that second supply. Right? After we get a break flow in the region and that retest, this shows us that order flow, if we get this extension to the upside, it shows us that order flow is really becoming concretely bullish. So this is really your timing here, potentially, or even the second pullback. It's just safer to be safe. I know that sounds stupid, but it's true. From a more potentially bearish perspective, we do see a lot of volume to the downside here. We do have multiple breaks of flow here. I think this is an important indicator as well. So What I would suggest watching, because GBPUSD is sort of my main focus pair currently, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth, but I would go ahead and say that this is my current sort of major supply here. If price gets above this, I might anticipate a pullback up into this area here, where it's either break or bounce. If you were to get the bounce, I would personally look to take that trade. Again, in a similar fashion, where we get that break, some sort of retest here, and then within this, again, looking for that break and retest to take that entry and time that appropriately, considering news, considering other stuff as well. If instead we just get that extension to the downside, really not much of a continuation trade that we can take there, and we'll just wait to see what happens further down the road as we approach this lower area that I highlighted just a few minutes ago. Yep. So I'm going to call this our sort of current major intraday supply here. I'm actually going to put it right there. And we'll go back up to the 4 hour. Nothing much else that we really need to highlight here. This is sort of your current low high supply, if you want to put that on there. But this is going to be largely based on how the dollar performs this week. If we see bearish dollar, this thing's going up. If we see bullish dollar, this thing's going down. And we're just looking to potentially trade order flow. I have a bearish stance on the pound in general, and particularly against the US dollar. I have a bullish stance on the US dollar from a sort of macroeconomic standpoint. So it's pretty clear, you know, what my bias is for the week, but need a little bit more data as we come into this new week, this new month, this new quarter, and hopefully we'll get some more insight here soon. AUDUSD still playing within that range that we talked about last week. However, we did crack below it, and then price came all the way back up. This is sort of why I don't like to play ranges that much. If you recall, over the past couple of weeks, I've been saying that if price gets below this area, I still wouldn't look to take the continuation trade because, to be honest with you, there's a very clear indication that buyers exist in this region, and it's likely that price is going to kind of range up and do its thing. Now, this week we do have some RBA interest rate decisions, so that might shake things up a little bit. But I'm still not going to be looking to take any trades on AUDUSD as long as we're in this range. It's going to be a few weeks, if not a month or two, until I'm really focusing on AUDUSD again. Now, I mentioned this as well last week. This is the only place that I would look to take a position on AU based on the high time frame range. And look, it provided, okay? The power price action is a beautiful thing. If you go back into this, back test this transition at 0.6500 roughly. Go in there, look at the details, see how it developed. I'm most certain that there was an opportunity there on Friday morning. Now, looking forward, I would say that this is our sort of current, I'm actually going to put it on this wick here. That's sort of our current H4 intraday major demand. If price gets below this, I think we're going to fill out the rest of the range here to the downside. If price does not get below this and just pushes right back up, I would be really hesitant to take any sells because buyers are still in control and we haven't seen any major instance of an order flow switch. So if you were to get something like this and then a retest, you could look for a transition and a continuation into the bottom of the range. If you wanted, if price instead just kind of booked it and kept on pushing down and then did its thing, I wouldn't be looking for a trade in this situation. Either way, again, I'm not going to be looking for a trade on AUDUSD because we're in this big high time frame sort of secondary consolidation phase, and we have been now for 46 and a half days. So I'm not really looking to play this. It's a little bit volatile, and that just simply is what it is. Last thing that I will cover here is going to be, if I can find it. So we have been talking about this potential shift towards more bearish pressure on Nasdaq. Now, there's going to be a lot of speculation this week, especially with any new data or decisions coming out from Powell talking early this week, or even NFP data later in the week. However, one thing that I am seeing is that we have really broken this daily supply. And when we break a daily supply on Nasdaq, it is sometimes a very interesting signal. Buyers are stepping back in and trying to defend their position here around the mid 14,000 region. As we move into a slightly smaller time frame, we can see that we do have a pretty clearly dominant bullish flow, and that this demand, even though it was a full and complete sort of liquidity sweep pullback into that region, it did still hold. So that is one thing to note. You could go like this and just create a little bit of a demand zone. This is the area that if you are a Nasdaq trader, I would trade within currently. When it comes to Nasdaq, I always prefer the long positions, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now based on inflation and interest rates. So I've kind of been avoiding it. Now, if we were to get some clear order flow to the upside, let's just say overnight, we got a crack like this, and then some sort of pullback and transition, I may be looking to take a trade up into the low 15,000s here, roughly into about 15,200. That is one thing that I am going to watch, particularly into tomorrow or even Tuesday, around news events and such. Anything below this H4 demand, I would start to lean a little bit more bearish, but I would be very hesitant of this demand down here. This is a lot of money injected into the market. And this correlates to that big move that we saw on Wednesday into Thursday on EU, GU, AU, so on and so forth. If price gets below this, I would not be looking for immediate long positions. If price gets above this, I would be looking this area here. I'd be looking for a potential break and retest. But really, I wouldn't play in the middle of it. So this is also going to apply most likely to Dow Jones, US 30, or even S&P 500. But it's the same concepts. When I do my analysis, my high time frame analysis on stock indexes and such, they move a little bit faster, so I like to go down a time frame in general. My daily, I treat it as my weekly equivalent on currency pairs, right? So on currencies, I'm using weekly, daily, and H4 for these analysis, but for stock indexes, I might be using weekly for some major key levels, but mostly the daily H4 and then the H2 or H1 charts. Just a little bit of insight on how I do that, because I want you guys to get better, and I want you guys to be able to apply what I'm doing and what I teach you guys for free here into your own charts. So if you find this valuable and the rest of this video, give it a thumbs up so other people can see it. Drop a comment, show me some support, ask questions, whatever it might be. And until next week, trade smart, trade safe.